Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca. I'm an ichthyologist and also a PhD student studying Loricariidae, and today I'm going to talk about, one of the other taxa, the other genus of true carnivores within Hypostomnae. There are a few others, but you won't really see them in the trade so much, so I probably won't cover them. But today I'm going to talk about Pseudacanthicus. So these are the thorny devils really of Loricariidae with an attitude to match. They are popular and often striking, and many people fall for this genus because they do have big personalities and they're active fishes. They're more likely to go out maybe. Also their size means they can compete a little bit better with other fishes maybe. And then other genera, and also being a carnivore does kind of help because a lot of foods are aimed in that sort of bracket. So this genus is located within the Canthicus clade, along with Leprocanthicus, which I mentioned before in my video about snail eaters. But also includes Megalensistrus, which is a gigantic, it's a real bulky fish, whereas the others tend to be a bit more, I guess, elongate in a way. And of course, Acanthicus. And therefore this family does not really contain small fishes. The Canthicus clade has been evolving towards gigantism over time anyway, according to models and sort of evolutionary biology sort of estimates. The smallest Pseudacanthicus would likely be L097. I haven't really looked at all because there's so many L numbers and there's obviously different estimates, but L097 is the main one you're going to see. That's the smallest of Pseudacanthicus, and it's not that small. It's about 20 centimetres standard length, but with the potential to get bigger, and that standard length measure doesn't include the caudal fin or the tail fin. So, but this group does contain one of the largest of all Loricariids. Acanthicus though does reach over 90 centimetres standard length, which is debatably one of the largest. According to papers, they're not quite sure how large it gets. There's some small estimates and there's some larger estimates. And even some people suggest, and I would opt for this being safer than sorry if you get what I mean, but 100 centimetre standard length. And that has been noted as a potential. Pseudacanthicus though really does compete for this, and if the lower estimates are true, Pseudacanthicus might be bigger or on the same size. So Pseudacanthicus major is the largest member of Pseudacanthicus. This fish grows to around 60 centimetre standard length, which to be honest does compete also or add in the Panax, because you've got Panax schafari, which often gets sold as the smallest Panax, which is Panax bathyphyllus. Panax bathyphyllus grows to 30 centimetre standard length. It's a little bit more ornate, a prettier fish. But Panax schafari grows to 60 centimetre standard length. So it's kind of, I guess you're now competing on total length, which is really varied, and maybe it'd be difficult to say which one would win that, especially because they both have trailers. But this sort of shows the size of Pseudacanthicus, and I would probably, if you're not looking for large, like 500 litres or more, I would go for the L097, but even then I wouldn't have it in a smaller tank anyway, for a variety of reasons. But Pseudacanthicus are real brutes of fish. So, as a genus, they are known as the Cactus Plecos, with many other species within that genus will have other common names, but not all do, and obviously a lot of them will go exclusively by the L numbers. And so I've written a list of Pseudacanthicus you're likely to encounter, because I'm not going to go through them all, because some of them are L numbers, some of them is debatable, I guess taxonomically on what they look like, I guess. I've not really entirely gone into it. But so Pseudacanthicus lepidus, I'm just going to shove L0600 and L114 into that. There is debates, I think it's on L114 or L600. One of them might not be lepidus, but they're extremely similar. It usually gets referred to as CF lepidus because it isn't actually described as a separate species yet. This is the sort of leopard Cactus Pleco, the really striking one. They are gorgeous, and with age their patterns do change quite a lot, but this happens to all of Pseudacanthicus. So you buy this really striking little pretty juvenile and it ends up maybe not as striking as you once thought it or wanted it to be. The next ones are Pseudacanthicus pitanga. I think this is the scarlet pleco, and I think this is LO24. For some reason there's two and they sound similar, they look similar, the names. So pitanga is the one that doesn't often have, it doesn't have as much sort of black patterning, to put it sort of precisely. But it is one of the large ones. I think it says 30 centimetres stand length, but actually that's kind of normal for a lot of Pseudacanthicus. This is the scarlet one. It can be more red tone to it, but I don't find it, I find it a bit more brownish compared to the next one, which is Pseudacanthicus pirara. I don't think that has a common name. I think that's L25. That one's got the black markings, and it does depend on locality. Depending on sort of markings, I've seen them a bit more greyish and I've seen them a bit more red. I've seen some with a lot more black patterning than others. And I think it really depends on the locality that they're caught. Another one is Pseudacanthicus spinosus, and this looks really similar to Leprocanthicus. Oh my god. There's a Leprocanthicus that looks really similar, but it's more sort of brownish tone, whereas spinosus is more greyish. Obviously there's the entire anatomical differences. Leprocanthicus is longer in the head, it's not got as many sort of, I'd say, odontos around the body, because Pseudacanthicus really takes biscuit with odontos covering the body. Acanthicus does as well. They're ones that you really need gloves to handle or take the risk. Or other ways, and that is a real consideration with this genus. So that one is, I've seen it a few times. I wouldn't say it's as popular because it's not as striking as the others I mentioned. If you're very lucky, and this is my favourite of Pseudacanthicus, this is Pseudacanthicus serratus. I think it's called like Black Devil, Black Cactus Pleco. I don't know, it's a pitch black, it can be pitch black, it can have white spots, but it's very striking. It's not like a sort of grey scale. Even the juveniles, and I was involved with some of the first captive breds, I guess, imported into the UK, and they did have little white spots, and that's very similar. I think it's Pseudacanthicus fordii that it's debatably, I think there's a bit of taxonomic stuff on them. Like Pseudacanthicus, I don't know, but they can have white spots, they can be pitch black, it depends where they come from. They're not commonly imported from the wild. I believe they're found maybe exclusively, but maybe largely in Suriname, which makes it a bit difficult. When you do get wild imports, they tend to be larger, therefore they're a lot more expensive. The juveniles aren't expensive at all in terms of Pseudacanthicus, because Pseudacanthicus you're generally paying £50 plus, generally for most of them 50 to maybe 100 and something. For larger ones you'll be paying more, for typhoons you'll be paying more. Pseudacanthicus generally, I say you'll pay, Pseudacanthicus serratus I say you probably pay more just because it's not that common, you end up having to get larger ones. And the price does vary all the time. So next we've got a few undescribed ones, and this is what I'm not going to go through because there's so many. There's not that many, but there's quite a few, and I don't want to list loads of numbers. LO97, that's the smallest of the Pseudacanthicus, I think, and it's not described, so saying smallest is a bit iffy, because there seems to be quite a few estimates. Maybe it even does get to the same size, or it takes longer, I don't know. But this is, it's black with white spots. I wouldn't say it's nearly as striking as if you get Pseudacanthicus serratus with spots, but it is a smaller fish. I think it looks a little bit more elongate, but don't quote me on that. Next we have LDA 105, which I think is the typhoon. Not commonly exported, and they're probably the most expensive of Pseudacanthicus. They're quite striking, but I think it's sort of, I don't see the thrill in them personally. Finally is the popular L273. I think I've got those numbers right. That's the problem with L number system. One number can make a lot of difference. But this is the Titanicus. Very similar, I think, similar-ish to the Typhoon. It has the orange markings, but then they decrease with age. Typhoon has a lot more, but I don't know. I would rather go for serratus than any of these really bright-coloured Pseudacanthicus. But yeah, there are others that come into trade, and they might be a little bit more infrequent than your the ones I've mentioned, because they are generally wild exported. I think most of them probably have been bred in captivity. Pseudacanthicus serratus I know has, but it's very uncommon. The other ones, yeah, the reason they're not really, I guess, bred in captivity so much is more, well, their attitude. None of the species in this group are particularly tolerant of each other, and other loricarids, particularly same size, but I would say even small ones, you're going to get a large fish that, if it does have territorial aggression, is going to cause a lot more damage than, say, a similarly sized or a smaller one. But I wouldn't keep large size differences of loricarids together, and I found that out particularly of these guys because they are territorial. But Pseudacanthicus seems to be particularly bad. They're territorial, they will throw themselves at each other. I've got a video on aggression and territoriality within Hypostominae, which is the subfamily of Loricaridae. I'm mostly talking about, or mostly talk about anyway. And I think it does show some Pseudacanthicus because they're particularly good at throwing themselves at each other. And they can be very nasty even from a small size or small age, and like particularly you might see juveniles with white marks, and that's where they've just been rasping on each other. So I wouldn't really be so keen on having a group unless you've got a large tank, having loads of, you want loads of decor to break up that sort of scenery, because when they fight they can fight a lot. They're a lot more nastier, and even at a young size, even people will have to separate them entirely as a fry. So you might get a fish like that and think, oh, it's younger, it'll take ages to be fine. Ages to show aggression. No, they're nasty from a young age. Yeah, they're nasty buggers. But they are nice fish, and that's part of the appeal, I guess. The reason they're quite competent is they are quite nasty. So let's talk a little bit more about keeping them in captivity. Generally these fishes seem to inhabit more faster flow, faster water, so some way of making that sort of a current. And obviously powerheads and wave makers are a good method of that. I would say there is other methods. Don't entirely rely on external filtration either. Obviously there's methods using sort of air-powered filtration. Obviously the issue with that is, and it's similar with other things, you don't really know the actual flow it's producing. Because it will say how much litres of air it's producing out, but that doesn't exactly correlate to how much water it's moving. And if you're using multiple tanks, that's really difficult to predict. And I think the same with filters, external filters, even internal filters. And also it depends on the unit, how much media you've got putting in. And I guess also where that power head in relation to everything is. So if it's at the bottom and the media has, the water has to go sort of, it's not, it depends whether the last thing it goes to is the pump, because then I would say that's probably going to be faster than if the pump has to force it through the media, and that's more variable, I guess, on internals and hang on the backs, hence why it's a little bit more difficult to predict, but I really like the internal I'm using at the moment. So what do these fishes eat? These are strict carnivores, but I'm using carnivory in the way you might not think about it. But these fish are very willing feeders, like the previous two genera I talked about, Scobiancistris and Leprocanthicus. Although instead of feeding on mollusks and snails, these guys are more on other invertebrates and even sponges, which are animals, hence it's easier to say they're carnivores than some other genera, which are like, it's impossible to really define that in most fishes, whether they're carnivore, omnivore or what, because then you'd say they're all omnivores, but that doesn't really cater for what they need in captivity. So this kind of makes them quite easy to feed in captivity anyway. And if you're interested, or if I forget anything, anything I mentioned for the Leprocanthicus and Scobiancistris would work for Pseudacanthicus, to be honest, as a diet. And there are reports, what was it? There are no references of feeding on sponges, by the way. It's generally just hobby sort of reports. So if they do or not, I don't think it matters, because you can't entirely get sponges in captivity. You can get stuff like bryozoa, other things, but they tend to be more of a pest, and they're not going to grow at sustainable levels to sort of sustain any fish. So these fishes in general are carnivores, as I said, and I would look at a whole host of different invertebrates. So generally a carnivore diet would be good, and if you look at the ingredients on the back, it will say firstly what the ingredients are, and how much really is dictated by how high it is on the thing. But you want sort of a variety of different invertebrates. Generally I'll go for a variety of different insects, maybe in a dry diet or a gel diet, mussels are fine. I would not feed them frozen. I've talked thousands of times about diamonase. It's not needed. You can feed without even bothering with diamonase, so I wouldn't bother with mussels or prawns. Frozen in a dry diet's fine, because that will remove most of the diamonase, and the thiamine will be replaced as a supplement. Other than that, what else? So you want that basis of a dry or gel diet that's got a high variety of ingredients for a carnivore, and then that will contain most of the minerals, most of the vitamins, and then working off that, something like trying different frozen foods. I just go across and pick everything that's not too small, and if it's too small when you try it first time, maybe don't buy it again, but you can always try it out. Like plankton's probably not worth it, cyclops is too small, daphne should be fine. It's just, and you want to let it actually settle on the bottom. If you've got fast feeding fish, there's no way a lot of frozen food is going to bottom, no matter how fast it's falling, because fast feeding fish will get there first. You don't want to rely on whitebait, mussels and anything that could potentially be high in diamonase. So yeah, and then other things, so tubiflex would be good, and therefore there's plenty of live foods to use. And other than that, what else? Reptile stores, looking at earthworms. Earthworms are brilliant. Also looking at sort of maybe roaches, crickets, ideally dead if you could get them to sink, snails, stuff like that. Just thinking outside the box. You could get apple snails from a Asian supermarket, or I don't know, other supermarkets, and just thinking out of the box. And I think that's where you can really enjoy carnivores, maybe in a little bit of a different sense, because you could try different foods to see if they eat it. Whereas herbivores, there's not so much you could try that really fits into their dietary requirements. Also remember that these fishes are adapted not just in their physiology, so their teeth, their gut, for what they're naturally eating world, and these are still mostly wild caught. Even then they're not going to be that far generation wise off the wild caught. But also those enzymes, and once they're in captivity, you want to maintain those natural enzymes, that natural bacteria, rather than sort of maybe make it sort of more artificial, or even reduce. It would end up more reducing that sort of diversity in their system. So they're one you could really enjoy dietarily wise. Another thing I swear I forgot to mention, but these fishes do best at, so different ones need different temperatures. Some really do need those higher temperatures of 28 or more. I wouldn't say there's any that really will want to go below 25, 24. But then you've really got to research the species. So the popular ones from the Riozingo go higher. And then really research what they're experiencing in the wild. And don't just try and go for the lowest possible because it fits in with the fish you have. If you want a fish, get a fish because you enjoy it and you're going to cater for its requirements. And it's their life at the end of the day, and these are very long-lived fish. So they're going to outlive like a dog, a cat, maybe even a horse, or even competing like with birds. So I wouldn't just shortcut it at all. These are fish that you can really prove how long fish can live and that they have personality. But anyway, I'll finish this topic. It's a long video. Thank you for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe, comment, like. If you have anything to say in the comments, like about Pseudacanthicus, please do. I'll be putting the papers I've read. Not many, it's mostly ones focused on Pseudacanthicus that I'm talking about because there are a few genetic studies that I don't think are relevant to this. And thank you for watching.